Good evening and welcome. My name is Taylor Kingman. I want to call this meeting to order. We have a quorum of our board. We have 6 out of 7 this evening. Mr. Dindal, although we tried to finagle some things, we couldn't make it to where all of us could be here tonight, or any night in Monday in January. So Mr. Dindal will not be here tonight. But welcome. As president of the Board of Trustees of the San Angelo Independent School District, I would like to welcome all of you who are present at tonight's regular board meeting. Also welcome those of you who are watching the recording of this meeting online or on our public access channel. We appreciate your interest in the activities of our students and the business of SAISD. All items that will be discussed at our meeting this evening have been posted as required by state law. Also, as you may be aware, our board meets a minimum of 2 times per month, and most, if not all, of the items on our agenda this evening have been previously discussed at our earlier pre-agenda board workshop. As members of the SAISD Board of Trustees, we are here to set goals, listen to reports from our superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, and personnel appointments, and to make policy for the district. Please keep in mind that our meeting is a meeting of the Board of Trustees held in public and not a meeting of the public. However, we have a public comment item on every one of our meeting agendas that allows anyone present who wishes to speak to our board team on an item not on our action agenda or an action item on the agenda an opportunity to do so. Please provide your name and contact information and the specific topic you wish to address on the public forum located at the back of the room. Now, if you want to, I already have the list, so if you haven't signed up, please, it's over by Molly. Please listen carefully and comply with the following rules that we can move through this part of the meeting efficiently. Each speaker will be given a total of 3 minutes. The district will provide an official timekeeper. The district's timekeeper will report and record the time. You will be notified of when your time is up. Please stop speaking and return to your seat. Please respect the privacy of others and refrain from identifying students or employees or community members by name. Disruption of the meeting will not be tolerated at any times, and comments on any subject, whether positive or negative, must be courteous and respectful. Comments are limited to the specific topic you indicated on the form you filled out, and any speaker with a specific complaint about a district employee, decision, or operational issue should present that complaint through the appropriate mechanism, which is the district's formal grievance process. If you already have a pending grievance being processed by the district, you will not be permitted to speak on that grievance during public comment. Also, please understand, if you speak to us on an item not on our action agenda, that the board cannot reply to you except to thank you for your comments, since the matter has not been posted for discussion. In compliance with state law, these proceedings are recorded and will become part of SAISD's permanent legal record. In order that the recording will adequately reflect the proceedings, I ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking. I also ask, as I remind my fellow board members, to please turn off your cell phones. And again, thank you for being here and your support of SAISD. We will now have our invocation, and Pastor Ronnie Hawkins from Christian Fellowship Church will be giving our invocation this evening.
I invite you to bow with me in a moment of prayer by your own religion or faith. Our Father and our God, we come before you this evening to invite your presence, your peace, and your comfort into this room, into the meeting. We pray that you would continue to provide the power, your presence, and your peace with those who are members of the board, and more importantly, with our superintendent and his family, the administration of the school district, from the principals, teachers, but most importantly, our students. We pray, Father, that you would put your arms of protection around them, provide them the safety and the comforts that they need to get a rich education from the best teachers in the state of Texas and the United States, and by the best board leading them in the state of Texas and the United States. Let your glory be seen through the power and the work of each employee and the members of this board, as well as their families as well. In Christ's name we pray, amen.
Thank you. We now have 4 students from Austin Elementary. We have Lana Mann, Easton Villafranco, Zachary Aguilar, and Curtis Mann. If y'all will come up here and lead us in our pledges. I'd ask that everyone else stand. And if y'all will, guys, if y'all will stay up here so Molly can get y'all's picture, and any parents want to take a picture. Thank you, guys. We will start moving forward with our agenda. We'll start with our recognitions. While Molly is coming up to do our recognitions, I just want to point out we do have one new member to our regular board meeting, and that is Dr. Christopher Moran. And so we are excited to have him, and he's stepped right into doing the business of the works of the district, so we're not going to make a big deal about that, but just...
Dr. Kingman, before Mrs. Johnson and Ms. Riddle leave, I just want to acknowledge them, also here from Austin. And I also wanted to point out their attires. They're still dressed in their 90th day of school gear. So thank you both for coming to support your students.
Thank y'all.
Good evening, Dr. Kingman, Dr. Moran, and members of the board. Tonight, we recognize the San Angelo Schools Foundation for their continued support in joining SAISD in uplifting our students and staff. These dedicated foundation members, some of which we have here with us tonight, collaborate with our district and educators to help our students reach their individual hopes and dreams by supporting and inspiring our educators to create and pursue innovation and excellence in the classroom. Since 1989, the Schools Foundation has awarded a total of over $800,000 in grants to teachers. And in November, they awarded over $94,000 to 66 educators, as well as 11 all-campus grants impacting 22 campuses. We cannot wait to see the innovative projects our educators and teams put the grant towards funds to help our students collaborate, critical think, create, and communicate. San Angelo ISD is greatly appreciative of the San Angelo Schools Foundation's decades of commitment to our students, support of our mission, and our educators, and the many contributions to improving our San Angelo community. So at this time, Dr. Moran, our board, please help me in recognizing our San Angelo Schools Foundation. I'll call out each of our board members' names and the ones we have present with us. I'll introduce them first, and then we'll take a photo with Dr. Moran. So we have with us President Stacy Elkins, and we also have Executive Director Noreen Carpenter. If y'all will come up here to the front. And other board members include Renee Orr, Robin Trainer, Corey Stewart, Jean Ann Owens, Brian Abernathy, Liz Albert, Jenna Barnes, Carol Barton, Rochelle Boyd, Diana Burke, Amy Crispin, Amy Dugan, Mike Ford, Marissa Giesek, Crispin Graves, Lauren Harper, Mackenzie Hollick, Ashley Honey, Deanne Kuhlman, Laura Langerhans, Tess Matthews, Laura Slaughter, and Terry Thompson. Thank you so much for everything you do for SAISD.
I think you're still up.
I'm going to welcome Dr. Moran for our next recognition.
We have a brief video for the board that's been prepared, and then I've got a few comments following the video.
I'm grateful to be able to school. I'm grateful to be able to experience a great.
I'll make some comments while they work on that. First of all, I'd like to just acknowledge the fact that, each January we take time and we pause to say thanks to our board members. And you can see there's tokens of appreciation for our board members. Being a board member just means being an advocate for our kids and really sacrificing your time and your energy. And it's a lot of time and energy. And there are community members that contact you with concerns. There are people who pass along kudos and good news to you. But you become a pipeline and an advocate for the school district. And I want to say, although we've only worked together now 2.5 weeks, it's a joy. I've met with each one of you individually. I've come to quickly learn and appreciate the fact that you all care deeply for this district and that you bring a variety of perspectives to the board table. I like the fact that we have diverse perspectives, and that means that we'll be sharpening one another and benefiting this district because of those opinions and perspectives. This evening, you'll find a photo collage that was created from each of our campuses, including our alternative campus and Tiny Texans. The photo frames were built and painted by Central High School and Lakeview High School Career and Technical Education in Mr. Ray Rangel's Construction Technology course. The floral arrangements by our Central High School and Lakeview High School Career and Technical Education students in Mrs. Jennifer Urbanek and Ashley Kellemeyer's floral design courses. And then I'd like to introduce, we have a couple of special guests tonight, represented by Mr. Ramirez and Lakeview, but we have two student ambassadors, or school ambassadors, Alaya Favila and Angelica Estrada. If you'll please stand, we'd like to recognize you and thank you for coming tonight. These students were very involved in creating the floral arrangements and have come tonight to represent their high school so well. So, Mr. Ramirez, thank you, and ladies, thank you. I think we probably want to take a picture, don't we? Come on up. You can say those words. We'd love for that. And then we'll run the video. Did I get your last name right?
Pretty close. Yeah. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of the school board, we want to express our sincere gratitude for your dedication for our education system. Your hard work and commitment have profound impact on shaping the future of our students. Thank you for your tireless efforts in making our schools better each day.
We, the Lakeview Ambassadors work each year to build connections within our community while continue the works of Flip Flippins, capturing kids' hearts. Through our studies, we have learned the importance of making others feel seen, heard, and shown gratitude. We acknowledge the national days, and we would like to thank you during the School Board Recognition Month for making this all happen. Thank y'all.
Great job. Thank you.
I'm grateful to be able to experience a great soccer program.
I'm grateful for our Taffy program here at Lakeview because we're able to go to competition and build ourselves into future educators.
I'm extremely grateful for our ambassador program at Lakeview because it helped individuals become great leaders and helped our community come together as one.
I am grateful for the RTC program here at Lakeview to get the ability to advance our leadership skills by being able to compete in different areas and express ourselves in different teams.
I'm grateful for the Chief Ed program at Lakeview because we get to go to all the out-of-town games, and for competition we get to perform all our dances and get to go to nationals.
I am thankful for the ambassador program here at Lakeview because it gave me a better high school experience.
I'm grateful for being in extracurricular activities, especially sports. I love going on trips with friends, and it's just a great experience.
I'm grateful for being in ambassadors and helping all kids around the community.
I'm thankful for being in Taffy for opening me up to more teaching possibilities.
I'm thankful for NHS because they acknowledge the hard work students put into their schoolwork.
I'm grateful for all the programs here at Lakeview,
especially cheer and ambassadors, because with cheer I was able to fly to Orlando, and with ambassadors I was able to be a part of the community more.
Thank you, Lupita Arroyo.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor Kingman.
Thank you, Amy Mazzell Flint.
Thank you, Bill Dwindle.
Thank you, Pam Duncan.
Thank you, Dr. Kyle Mills.
Thank you, Gerard Gallegos.
Thank you, San Angelo School Board members.
None of this would be possible without you.
And now I think we'd like to take a photo of the board, so I'm going to invite the board down quickly just to stand with these students and administrators.
All right, that concludes our recognitions. We're going to move forward. We have minutes from our December 4th, 2023 special meeting, our December 11th, 2023 pre-agenda workshop, and our December 18th, 2023 regular board meeting. A motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approve.
Motion from Mr. Gallegos and a second from Mrs. Arroyo. All in favor say aye. All against say the same. Motion passes 6-0. All right, so now we have public comments for topics not on the agenda of this meeting. And we have one who has signed up, Mr. Virgil Passetti, and the topic is leadership.
I know this is board month, so, I do appreciate y'all's time. I know it takes away from your kids. I've seen one of you recently with your family and great set of kids, and, I'd feel bad being away from them all the time too, but unfortunately we're in the business of educating, and so, our new superintendent said some nice words, and all I want to add is, there's fire, there's water, there's the yin, there's the yang. It's, I think two of you are going to go represent us somewhere next month, probably at a convention. I would hope that you would consider the pulse of the community. I mean, over the last 6 months, I've seen a couple of things happen that concern me. I know when y'all went to 7+1, you came back and you voted to take away 40% of the community's time to talk. And I've gone out and canvassed probably 200 people, and we're a pretty conservative Republican town here, and taking time away from. If you have 14,000 students, that means you have 28,000 parents. And I've yet to find a parent that said, I really think it's a good idea that you take away 40% of our time. If we truly have something wrong and we want to come tell you about it, taking time away from us is not what the community wants. And maybe y'all have talked to people different than I, but I've talked to lawyers, doctors, my other mechanics, the guy that delivers the parts, my waitress, just people in the community. And, and then, I saw y'all sanction a teacher that missed by 4 days. She was beloved by the special ed kids. I've talked to some people that had that teacher, and they're like, she was great. And, 7-0, we sanctioned her and potentially took away her ability to earn money. That's not really what people want in the community, Sometimes you got to hold people accountable, but, there's other cases where, that's really cutting it close. And people really like that teacher. And there's some other things, the school vouchers. I know y'all like big government, and you think you can do it better than everybody, and probably you can. You know more about it. But taking voting, I know it's not y'all's vote, but agreeing with the other districts that parents shouldn't have a choice, I've yet to find someone in the community that thinks that's a great idea. So, as you go to represent us, you were elected, but realize that there's constituents that backs you. And a lot of us, are pretty conservative and we care about the same things you do, but please don't come back and take away more of our time or more of our rights or not consider what the 28,000 parents out there might want. A lot of us do have good ideas, and we would hope that y'all would be open to those and not just try to do what the other districts are doing. Do what San Angelo wants. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Paccetti. All right, there was no one who signed up for public comments for topics on the agenda for this meeting. So now we're going to move into approval of our 2022-2023 audit report. And Dr. Brandon's going to start us off there.
Dr. Kingman, Dr. Moran, Board of Trustees. Each year, the district engages an independent certified public accountant to audit its financial reports. The audit report must be presented to the Texas Education Agency. The firm of Ide Bailey was engaged to perform the audit for fiscal year 2023. With us this evening, Jeremy Stevens, partner, Ide Bailey.
All right, good evening, members of the board. Yes, I'm Jeremy Stevens with Ide Bailey, and our firm has completed the audit of the financial statements of the district as of and for the year ended August 31st, 2023. I believe everybody has a copy of that bound report in front of you. Hopefully you had a chance to review that. Also have a brief presentation to cover some of the financial highlights. Again, pleasure to be with you tonight. As I'm going through this, if you have any questions, please feel free to jump in or just hold questions at the end. However, I'm pretty open to it, just however you want to do it. So with that being said, I will get into the presentation. First of all, the audit did go well this year, did not have any adjusting journal entries as a result of audit procedures. Additionally, we're not reporting any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls over financial reporting. So overall, just good, clean audit year. Beginning with our independent auditor's report, starting on page number 11, again up on the slide here. Really, I've summarized the 5 main points in the independent auditor's report up on the slide. First of all, it does begin with our opinion at the top, which states that in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the district. So this is what's known as an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statements. It then goes on to describe our basis for our opinion, which is that we conducted our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, and that we believe that the audit evidence we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our opinion. Immediately following that, the bottom of page number 11 is what is known as an emphasis of matter paragraph regarding the implementation of Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 96 regarding subscription-based IT arrangements. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board issued this statement a couple of years ago. It was required to be implemented this year by all governmental entities. So your district and every other school district in the state of Texas and all other entities in the U.S. were required to adopt this statement this year. It was a pretty significant change in the way that these subscription-based IT arrangements were accounted for. Whenever that happens, we just call attention to it in our report, just highlight that it happened. But again, our report is still unmodified. It's still a clean report. And really, just at a very high level, the change that happened here. Previously, these type of arrangements, you might have heard them referred to as cloud-based accounting arrangements. But previously, they were just expensed as incurred. So if you had a payment come up, you would expense it as it was incurred. Under this particular statement, if any of those arrangements meet certain criteria for length of service, renewal options, long-term type effects, and whatnot, they would be required to be capitalized onto your statement of net position. So what that means is your statement of net position got grossed up. You recorded a asset and then a corresponding liability for those long-term payments to be made under those arrangements. And then similarly, as you make payments on those now, rather than being expensed, they are drawing down that liability, kind of similar, it's recording similar to kind of a debt transaction now on your statement of net position. So that's kind of the change that happened now. Moving ahead to page number 12, it does at the top indicate what's management's responsibilities for the financial statements, which is that management is responsible for the preparation and the fair presentation of these financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Additionally, management is responsible for the design and implementation of internal controls. And then lastly, at the bottom, it describes our responsibility as auditor, which our objectives are to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatements and to express an opinion that they are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. There's also some narrative regarding our approach to internal controls, which is that we gain an understanding of the district's internal controls to design our audit procedures. However, we do not test them to an extent that allows us to express an opinion on the effectiveness of them. So we're not expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of internal controls. Now, jumping ahead to some of the information in the basic financial statements, I'll move ahead to page number 23 with the statement of net position, and then it goes on over to page number 24. I've summarized this particular statement on the slide at a very, very high level with a comparative column for 2022. This statement provides a snapshot of all assets and liabilities of the district at year end. Again, just kind of looking at the slide, you'll see that at the end of the current fiscal year, total assets were about $312 million. Last year, they were about $300 million. So that was an increase of about $12 million year over year. That increase in assets, largely a couple things driving that. Number one, various receivables, primarily amounts due from the state of Texas, have increased. And then also amounts that are held in some of your investment securities increased as well. Liabilities, pretty comparable year over year, about $205 million. $206 million this year, about $207 million last year. So like I said, really comparable year over year. If you added up your net position, that's the amount your assets exceed your liabilities. At the end of the current fiscal year, it's about $106.5 million. Last year, it was about $93 million. So that is a increase year over year, about $13.5 million year over year. All right. The second statement that I'll touch on is the balance sheet of governmental funds, which is on pages 27 and 28 of the bound copy. Again, this statement provides a snapshot of assets and liabilities of the district. However, it is presented on what's known as the modified accrual basis of accounting. So it's focused on current assets and current liabilities. You'll see that there's no capital assets recorded to this. On the liability side, there's no liabilities for your debt payable, your bonds payable. None of the leases or those SPITA liabilities are noted. Additionally, there's no net pension or net OPEB liabilities. These are the district's current obligations and then its current resources to meet those obligations. Under this basis of accounting, you'll see there, like mentioned on the slide, total assets about $108.4 million this year. It was about $91 million last year. So total assets did increase about $17.4 million year over year. Again, largest category of these assets, cash and investments, about $51 million this year, pretty similar to last year, about $52 million last year. Those make up almost 50% of total assets on the balance sheet of governmental funds. The items driving the total assets up, again, you'll see those receivables are up a little bit this year. Those are amounts that are due from the state of Texas. And then those investments balances have increased as well. As far as liabilities of the district at year end, about $25 million this year, about $19.5 million last year. So did increase year over year by about $5.5 million year over year. Overall, though, fairly comparable. If you added up your assets less your liabilities, you get your total fund balance at year end. About $83.4 million across all funds this year. It was about $71.6 million last year. That increase in fund balance of $11.8 million when you divide it out amongst funds, majority of it was in the general fund. General fund balance increased by about $11.9 million this year. Then the other governmental funds decreased about $60,000. That's, like I said, the bulk of that increase is in that general fund category. And on this particular slide, I've highlighted the fund balance of the general fund. On this slide, you can see that increase up to about $74.4 million this year, compared to about $62.5 million last year. Again, this slide, that fund balance is divided up against various categories. You'll see there's a big increase in that amount of fund balance that is committed. The district did commit some additional fund balance for future construction projects, so that's why that balance has increased year over year. The unassigned fund balance at the end of the current fiscal year is about $48.8 million. That's the amount that's available to the district to kind of fund regular operating activities. One measure you can use to gauge the health of that is compared to your average monthly general fund expenditures. Generally, I hear recommendation to keep a minimum of 2 to 3 times your average monthly general fund expenditures in that unassigned fund balance category. Based on the 2023 fiscal year, that unassigned fund balance represents about 5.3 times your average monthly general fund expenditures. So you are exceeding what I hear is that minimum reserve of 2 to 3 times your average monthly general fund expenditures. Lastly, on this slide, I am reminding all boards that I present to this year that the so-called, as TEA calls it, the fiscal funding cliff is coming. I just want to remind you and put that on your radar. Over the last couple of years, all districts have enjoyed a lot of ESSER money coming in through the COVID programs and through ARPA and so forth. Those revenues, those programs are going to be coming to an end, and TEA has repeatedly said when they come to an end, there will not be additional revenues to come into that. So foreseeably, some of those expenditures that have been paid through ESSER funding will have to presumably come back to the general fund. So again, just kind of reminding you that that ESSER program is going to be coming to an end. Just kind of keep that in the back of your heads as you're doing your plannings in your meetings and whatnot. All right, last statement that I'm going to touch on is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balance. That's on page 30 and 31. Again, summarized up on the slide, you'll see total revenues for the current fiscal year about $175 million. Last year, it was about $169 million. So total revenues increased about $6 million year over year. Local revenues, that's largely property taxes, child nutrition type revenues for charges for meals served, investment revenues, and so forth. The increase there, a big part of it is actually additional investment income. Rates were going up this year, so additional investment income did come into play there a little bit. State revenues, that's amounts of state aid received from the state, pretty comparable year over year, about $63 million. And then those federal revenues, that's revenues from all the other sources, ESSER, child nutrition programs, Title I, special education, and so forth. About $38 million this year compared to about $35 million last year. As far as expenditures of the district, current year expenditures about $163 million. Last year it's about $149 million. So total expenditures did increase year over year by about $14 million. It's just under a 10% increase. Again, rising prices, and it's kind of the environment that we're in these days. All costs and all expenditures seem to keep on increasing. It's no different for the school district. So those expenditures continue to increase. Largest expenditure category, your instructional expenditures, about $85 million this year. It's a little over 50% of total expenditures for the year. And on this last slide here, there are 2 other reports that we're issuing at the very back that I'll touch on just briefly. The first is on page number 130, and it is our report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance. Again, this report reiterates that we're not expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of internal controls. However, if we did report any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls or any instances of noncompliance, this is the report that we'd report those to you in. Again, happy to report that there were no such items to report. And then lastly is our reports on compliance required by the uniform guidance. That's on page number 132. Each year as a part of our audit, we select federal programs that are determined to be the major federal programs to be tested of the district, and that's based on selection criteria established by the U.S. federal government. And then we perform tests of those programs so that we can express an opinion as to whether the district complied with the requirements of those programs. For the current year, we tested the Title I Part A program, that ESSER program, and then the Emergency Connectivity Fund. The opinion on those is found at the top of page 132. Basically states that in our opinion, the district complied with the requirements of those programs. So again, this is what's known as an unmodified or a clean opinion on compliance as well. All right, I believe that was everything I had prepared. So while I'm here, do you have any questions for me?
First, I just want to thank you, Mr. Stevens, for getting this to us on time and with time for us to look at it all before the meeting. So I appreciate your firm and all the work that our group did as well. So thank you for getting that for us. And then also thank you for explaining the SBITA, the 1.2 million, because reading page 46 and note Q, I still couldn't figure that out. So thank you for that. And then just because Mr. Parker would be upset if I didn't mention it, the fact that we have an unmodified and clean report is the thing that, when it comes to an auditor, obviously, you aren't looking at how we're spending our money. You're just making sure that we're accounting for it appropriately. And so what we want to hear is the unmodified clean report. So thank you for that.
Yes.
So it means our people are doing a good job. So thank you, Jaime and Dr. Brandon, for that as well. No.
Thank you very much.
And just for our parents and staff at home, obviously but our fund balance has increased, but part of that is intentional with ESSER funds expiring and with building projects going on at the moment. Although we as a board have traditionally wanted to keep about 3 months of fund balance, we felt it was important with the change in funding and not knowing what the legislature was going to do as far as funding as well, to make sure that we had an opportunity to run a budget for this year and the following year that would not be a deficit budget. So just in our fiscal conservatism, we went ahead and accounted for that, not knowing what the future is. So we will move forward. Oh wait, we don't have to do a motion or approval, or do we need to approve it? Go ahead and approve that tonight. Okay. So do I have a motion to approve the August 31st, 2023 annual financial report and the auditor's opinion?
I'll move to approve the August 31st, 2023 annual financial report and the auditor's opinion.
So I have a motion from Ms. Mizell Flint and a second from Mr. Gallegos. Any other board comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
You can say the same. Motion passes 6-0. So we will now move forward with our reports, and our first report is from Mr. Jason Henry, and it's a construction update.
Okay, Mr. President, as Mr. Henry and Hector with Park Hill come to present information to the board, last week I promised you I'd come and report back on some of the questions regarding construction. And my update prior to their presentation is that we've walked the McGill construction site, met with the construction company, met with the architects, talked about the timeline. We asked a lot of questions. And internally, then we came back and began to work on a plan, because that's what we promised you all. However, there's good news and bad news to this. The good news is we have a plan. The bad news is we haven't talked to the McGill staff yet. And we feel like that would be an important first step in talking to that staff prior to publicly presenting our plan there. So with the board's permission, I'd like a few more days. We're going to meet with that staff on Friday. And also it impacts the Austin campus as well, to meet with those individuals and talk through the plan, and then come back publicly in early February at the pre-agenda meeting and talk more specifically about the plan, because it was important to us to really thoroughly vet a plan to open our campus there at McGill in August, in spite of some of the challenges and chain of the shipping and receiving of materials on time. So that's kind of where we're at on that. And I think we're going to bring you as a board a plan that you'll be very, very satisfied with. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Henry and Park Hill.
Thank you, Dr. Moran. Dr. Kingman, members of the board. Tonight we have Hector DeSantiago from Park Hill. He's here to discuss our two major projects at McGill and Fannin.
Good evening, Dr. Kingman, Dr. Moran, and Board of Trustees. Hector de Santiago at Park Hill, firm principal, coming from El Paso. Just want to go ahead and give you an update, and we'll start off with McGill. All the concrete slab has been poured, so that's good news. I know there was some weather, but no, that didn't really retain them from keeping that going. Masonry walls are going up by the kitchen area. All the structural steel is on site, which that is really good news. And metal deck is also on site, which is actually the metal piece that goes over the structural beams. And then the hollow metal frames, door frames are on site as well. And then cold form metal studs are on site as well. We continue to go and observe the site, make reports, transmit them to everybody. And let me just show you some progress photos from last Wednesday, January 17th. As you can see, that's the CMU block wall at the kitchen of McGill. And then you see a lot of the structural steel already going up. It was a very cold morning that day, but they were still out there working and welding, so that was good to see. You can see some of the stored material on site, obviously steel joist, and the metal deck, as I mentioned, is on site. So that's good to see all that there. As far as Fanning, earthwork sub is working on site work for the parking lot drop-off road. Structural steel erection has commenced, so we're already starting to see that going up as well. The connecting corridor, structural steel erection, that was nearing completion while I was there. And then the hollow metal door frames are on site as well. Cold form metal wall studs are on site as well. And again, we continue to do site observations and field reports. And if there's any deficiency, we note them up and they get taken care of. But we really haven't had those issues. And you can see, the connecting corridor on your right, that's where they were nearing completion of some of the welding. And then on the left, you see some of the steel joists going up as well. They're also, typically you wait until the structural steel is all up and then they start putting metal studs, but actually they kind of want to jump ahead and start going. You can see some of the metal studs on some of the structural steel. And there you see it as well. And then to the right, you see the earthwork contractor kind of really working on that parking lot, the drop-off road. Essentially, that parent drop-off will begin as a parent drop-off initially, and then in the future, when future phases are added on, then that'll become the bus drop-off, and you'll have parent drop-off more towards the east. So, be happy to answer any questions you may have, but it's really good to see concrete and structural steel and metal studs and deck on site. So hoping that you get continue to get some better weather and we should see more progress going. Any questions?
Any questions from the board? Thank you for making the drive over from El Paso. We're excited about the work that's being done over there, and we're excited to hear the plan in the future about timing and getting that to parents as quickly as possible. So,
yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we're now going to move forward with our student enrollment report for the 17th Monday of school, December 18th, 2023. And Dr. Brandon.
Dr. Keeman, Dr. Moran, trustees, just one extra piece of information from our pre-agenda meeting. We continue to track in a positive manner. We budgeted for 13,150 students, and we continue to stay around 13,180. The one piece of information we were missing was the third 6 weeks attendance is just over 93% compared to 92.8. So we're still tracking each 6 weeks higher than we were a year ago. So that's positive. and I believe Dr. Gomez is going to cover the attendance percentages in some detail, so I'm going to save that for her.
Thank you. Any questions for? Perfect. All right. Thank you, sir. And Dr. Gomez, once you get your wig on, we'll be ready for an update on academic programs. I thought you were going to wear the wig. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. You don't have to. You. Don't wear the wig. It was a joke.
I think everyone needs to know why some of us are still dressed like this. Well, I'll put it on because it needs to be televised. We don't normally dress like this. I wish that I could pan and see some of our other colleagues in the room. But yes, and we have some students here that have great 90 shirts on. A lot of our staff had Nirvana on today. But in all seriousness, Dr. Kingman, Dr. Moran, and members of the board, and thank you, Dr. Brandon, for kind of that introduction. This evening's academic update report is directly connected with our district system response for attendance. We know that when students are in school, their teachers can work with them and give them what they need so they can learn and grow at their fullest potential. So this is one of the places where when we're talking finances, budget implications, that it's still run by 6 weeks. Just want to clarify for those watching, we are on quarters in regards to grade reporting. But as Dr. Brandon has shared with you, I'm going to go ahead and take this off now so that I can pay better attention. But it was very important and part of the district system response because we needed to make increases on our overall attendance. So you can see for each 6 weeks or for the 2 quarters, we have had an increase in attendance. That's from very systematic responses from campus leadership and also for departments up here in the district. So I want to thank Dr. Brandon and his team members, Mr. Collenbach, his team members, Ms. Huddleston, Dr. Self, Dr. Skelton for campus supervisors. It's been very intentional. Excuse me. At your seats, we've shared this with you before, but when we talk about intentionality, I know no one can read that. That's why you have additional copies at your seats. When we talk about intentionality, we often in educator lingo use a lot of acronyms. It's important that we explain those to our stakeholders, especially our parents. And part of this intentionality under our multi-tiered systems of support, working specific with our school social workers, our at-risk coordinators, and our campus leadership teams, the district has developed universal supports. We talk about universal instruction because all students need that. So in the green, there in terms of attendance, that's what we want to provide for every student to be preventative before attendance issues pop up. And then you'll see in the yellow and the red, for students that may have attendance difficulties, different levels of support that the district can pour into those students. And then specifically when we talk about chronic absenteeism, where there's a pattern, especially in your secondary, where you may have students who've had attendance struggles all the way on from elementary, that's really hard to change. So it's important that our responses and our supports to family are different. So again, when we go back to celebrate the fact that we have increases, days like today where we celebrated the 90th day of school, where as some of us adults, we acted a little silly, but it all goes back to what's best for students and student outcomes. Also, the attendance on before the winter holiday, those 3 days, the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, those were not wear pajamas and play days. Those were academic instructional days. And as we talk district calendar in minutes, we know that every minute that a student is in school is very important. And each one of those campuses submitted to their campus supervisors the intentionality they were having on those days, the 18th, 19th, and 20th, to show, listen, we're not in break mode You will have a lot of time with your families, but these days and these minutes count. So that's why tonight's academic update, in all good fashion and spirit, we stayed in some 90 attire to show that students being at school is a district priority in San Angelo ISD.
Any questions for Dr. Gomez?
I just want to second or whatever, when you thanked all of y'all for the work that y'all have done. It is a lot of work. And some people think we want kids to come because the money, for attendance. But we know that when they're not there, they're losing academic time and instruction. And for a lot of kids, when you do those home visits or a social worker and you go to those homes, that takes a lot of time. A lot of those visits are done after hours so that you can meet the parent that works, and you find out a lot. And a lot of times it's not about school. And so the work that y'all put in the heart, I know the board appreciates that tremendously.
Dr. Gomez, I noticed that you had a decrease on the third 6 weeks from 95.36 to 93.01.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just if you can.
So historically, anytime when you start a new school year, the beginning of the year or quarter one, if you're talking 6 weeks, the first 6 weeks or the first quarter, your attendance is higher. The third 6 weeks or the second quarter where illnesses start to ramp up. Mine, I've just lost my voice from walking McGill's construction site, so I am not ill. You tend to see a slight decrease. So that was another reason when we're very intentional. January and February as well, illnesses tend to just spike in the regular school year. So we planned more. For example, today being the 90th day of school, but we are in really approaching late January, so we needed to pour in more to really show how important it is to be in school. Typically, on average, when you look at your trends, if you're talking the fourth, and the fifth 6 weeks of school is where we have to push in the most for attendance.
Cold and flu season.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. But still, when you talk about a decrease, you're absolutely right. But when you compare to last year, still shows that all their intentionality is paying off. We all own that we still would like it to be higher, but and our data is transparent. So we want to communicate that. Typically on academic update reports, we're somewhere around attendance, behavior, or course performance. Dr. Keeman, we don't have new middle-of-the-year course performance in regards to assessments because those windows are all open right now. But we will have information to share in regards to course performance updates, middle-of-year map, so comparison for growth because we're all committed in SAISD for each student growing from wherever they are, and we would have that data for the next academic update.
Thank you, Dr. Gomez. I just want to reiterate, thank you for the work that y'all are doing on this and our campus levels are doing on this. Having elementary kids, I do know that there is a palpable difference as far as how much we are pushing attendance on our campuses and intentionality on it. And so I appreciate the fact that campuses are collaborating on that and that the work that y'all are doing to help them collaborate on that. So thank you.
I also want to give a shout out to communications. I'd be remiss if I didn't. So for today, for example, for the contest, the winner could only use the tag 90 days at SAISD on Twitter. And Chick-fil-A is a great partner. They're sponsoring the winning site. So I know many use Facebook, but the official site for that, it was the search on Twitter. And so thank you to our communications team for promoting that because it all connects to student outcomes.
Thank you, Dr. Gomez, and I'm sorry I asked about the wig. All right. We're going to move forward with consent items. We have consent item A, which is consider donations. We had the T-shirt proceeds from San Angelo Reads by Gandy Inc. were gifted to the district. The family of Sarah Anderson made a donation to Austin Elementary, and the Glenmore Booster Club made a donation to Glenmore Elementary. So thank you for those donations. We also had bid 20-009, Transportation and Miscellaneous Supplies, which was an add-on to our RFQ that we'd already previously approved. And I don't believe, and our other was considered superintendent's recommendations for personnel, but there were no recommendations for personnel. So we have consent items A through B. Do I have a motion for approval of consent items A and B?
Make a motion to approve consent items A and B.
I'll second.
So I have a motion from Mr. Gallegos and a second from Dr. Mills. All in favor say aye. Against say the same. Motion passes 6-0. All right, we're going to move forward to our bills, accounts, and financial statements of December 2023. Get to that page. So since Mr. Dindal isn't here, I will make the public service announcement that all of our bills, accounts, and financial statements were previously discussed at our pre-agenda meeting, and all of these records, including our checkbook, are available on our website under financial transparency. With that, I'll make a motion to approve our bills, accounts, and financial statements for December of 2023. And I have a second from Mr. Gallegos. Any board comment? All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say the same. Motion passes 6-0. We then have a proposed amendment for the district official budget of our general fund. That's on page 51. Dr. Brendan, were you going to explain that, or you want me to just explain it real quick? Okay. So this is we moved $2 million from our fund balance to our general fund to pay for expenditures in construction, and we will continue to do that over the construction projects, however long that is. And every time we do that, we have to move that money from fund balance to our general fund. So it is no change in, it's really no change in budget expenditures. It's just a function code that we have to change. It's from our committed fund balance. Do I have a motion to approve the amendment for the district official budget, general fund? I'll make a motion. Sorry. And do we have a second from Mr. Gallegos?
A second from me.
So a motion from myself and a second from Mr. Gallegos for to approve the general fund budget amendment for January 22nd, 2024, with no changes to function codes, which result in no monetary differences and an increase in expenditures in the amounts of $2 million. All in favor say aye. Aye. All against say the same. All right. Now our favorite part of the year. Dr. Gomez, we'd like to have you come up and talk about our district calendar.
Dr. Keenan, you're exactly right. It's always the favorite time of year when we get to take in all the input on calendars. I think it's very important for those watching on television to know the district's process for getting information to present to the Board of Trustees who ultimately adopt the calendar. In SAISD, we have a community-based accountability system committee of over 100 stakeholders. Stakeholders include parents, staff, students, and community members. And that committee also serves as our district site-based committee. We visited in person with this committee and received information that was used to compile options for the Board of Trustees. I know that no one can read this on the screen. The board was sent the information, the feedback that was received from those individuals who did visit with us in person, but we wanted it recorded in writing. And so we had a little over 62 official formal responses that was used to compile this. the questions, so for those watching on television, that were important driving factors, because once you start putting in required dates, there's some things you really can't change too much on a school calendar. So it was important that we receive feedback from these stakeholders on the start of school, meaning would they prefer a 2-day rollout, and we call the rollout with students starting school. So if you've never visited a pre-K classroom or a kindergarten classroom, or even a 7th grade classroom at the start of school, new school tired is different than regular tired. So we wanted feedback. Did they prefer students and staff to attend Thursday and Friday, the first week, wherever that was, or what we refer to as a 3-day rollout, where students and staff attend Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of the first week? Responses on this question came back with 67.7% supporting a 2-day rollout. We did have a 2-day rollout on the 22-23 school calendar. That came directly from that committee's feedback last fall, because prior and historically the district had done a 3-day rollout, and that's why we wanted specific information. We know the demands of education. We think the nation as a whole and parents saw the demands of education when they were having to work from home and also educate their students at the same time. And so coming out of the pandemic, more than ever, balancing the workload for our staff, because when staff aren't in classrooms, we are fortunate in SAISD that we have wonderful substitutes. Replacing that child's classroom teacher, even with a wonderful substitute, is not the same experience. And what we heard more and more with the increase from teachers, where we need time to, in just teacher plain terms, work on the work. And when we say work on the work, not be pulled for a meeting, not be pulled for a conference, not be pulled for training, but just time to work on the work, where they weren't taking as much work home with them, and they would have more time for their social, emotional well-being and time with family. With the 22-23 school calendar, 4 instructional planning days were added on this year's calendar based on that feedback, because that was new. We needed to receive information. Was this something the stakeholder group wanted to see continued, or did it not meet and fulfill the original intention? So the question specifically was, instructional planning days were added to the calendar in the 23-24 school year due to feedback from teachers that they need a time built in the schedule to plan lessons, create assessments, and work on the work without any interruptions. Do you want to see the continuation of instructional planning days on the next school calendar? 98.4% said they did. So with that kind of drove where we could start with some options for the board to consider. Also, just historical data. Sometimes it's, well, we do this quite frequently. We go back and we look and see what's been done in past years. Some of the things that always the calendars are set by, certain key criteria. One of those including San Angelo ISD always has the same spring break as Angelo State University. So that's how we put our spring break on the calendar that we propose. That's one of the first things we check. Historically, we were always asked to finish school, if at all possible, without there being bad weather days or catastrophic events that resulted in school closures, before June 1. So those are kind of some of the factors. Depending on, like this year is a prime example, where Christmas falls or Easter falls, those are other large holidays that also kind of drive what you can work on within a calendar. But Memorial Day was one that was asked about. And so as we try to do all these things and give all the options, we do have a number of days to meet for staff and for students. And since TA did away with days and went to minutes, we don't have to designate bad weather days because we have extra minutes in case we did have to have a closure. So we just show data in years where we have ended school before Memorial Day and years where we have ended after Memorial Day. It's just to note one of these. So before Memorial Day, from 2012 to 2023, there were 5 years where we did end before Memorial Day. One of those, graduation, was on the 29th, and Memorial Day was on the 31st. So it was just where the calendar falls. Some could argue, did you really finish before Memorial Day because you finished that weekend? But this is the hard data to show. And then 6 years after Memorial Day are listed just for reference. So you have, for consideration and a calendar if we need to go back and take further feedback, aside from the 62 responses from the committee and the additional comments, we certainly can do so. But we have 3 options to present. Option A and option C are very similar. The difference is the end date of school in option A and option C. Option A has pre-K through 11th grade finishing on the 30th and seniors finishing on the 24th. Option C has all students pre-K through 12 finishing on the 30th. Option B does vary, and you can look specifically at the start dates for staff. This year, the feedback that we heard from the stakeholders was they requested more time at the beginning of school. Campus principals asked for more time. As you know, we have a pretty thick TASB policy update this evening. Typically, in every policy update, we have new required professional learning that we're required to share with staff. So teachers and campus leaders asked for more time at the beginning of school. Option A and option C have added an additional day. With that, when you look in the month of February, as Mr. Gallegos asked, we are approaching the time of year. We're pushing in all resources we can to have attendance for both our staff and students. It's critical. February is historically the lowest attendance rate for students and staff both. And in your packet, you had specific information that showed a particular Monday in February where the district is challenged to fill classrooms. So we took that feedback. Also, it's important to recognize on these calendar options some other slight changes. We heard from the stakeholder group, which was new to us, but we're always open to that they asked for holidays to match federal holidays as much as possible. The one that has been changed specifically is Veterans Day. We have wonderful military relations and support in San Angelo, and many of our schools do Veterans Day programs. So we felt before that input that the want was really to be there on Veterans Day, but the feedback came back of we really wish our students and staff were out on Veterans Day so they could be with their families. So you see that change there. Martin Luther King Day has been a trade day prior for San Angelo ISD, but it is on the calendar as a holiday for staff. So what trade, just a reminder for those watching on the recording, trade are hours of professional learning time that an employee gathers outside the regular workday. So for teachers, teacher on a 10-month contract, they receive professional learning as soon as the last day of school through the end of October to have the Monday and Tuesday of Thanksgiving week as trade. Pretty much follows that for all employees in the district. If an employee is 12 months, they're on a 12-month contract, so you can think child nutrition, there's some child nutrition staff, there's a lot of maintenance staff, and you have a lot of professionals on a 12-month contract. So outside of non-contract days, those employees after hours of 5 o'clock or on Saturdays and Sundays acquire their trade credits to be out. As the district has hiring never stops, as that has increased even more so the last several years, having Martin Luther King Day as a trade day was causing a great strain on HR and campus leadership. We definitely have a culture of professional learning in SAISD. That's why there will continue to be 2 trade days, but rather than 3 for 18, Martin Luther King Day is defined as a holiday. So I know that was a lot in a short amount of time. I figured I could help with questions. I know that there's been discussion in terms of you all seeing these in advance, but you may have additional questions. We just want to reiterate, if we would like to come back with another proposal, we can definitely do that, but we wanted everyone to know from the comments how this came to be.
And Mr. President, if I can make a comment, really for the board's relief, just know that there's no pressure on the board. We want it to be a win-win, and if there are questions or things to work through, let's do that. We can adopt tonight, or we can come back in February and adopt a calendar. But you should not feel pressured to adopt a calendar either tonight or adopt one that you don't feel comfortable with. I think it'd be good to have some discussion.
So I'll open up to the board for questions for Dr. Gomez or whoever gets to chime in to answer the questions to help Dr. Gomez if there's other questions.
I just had a quick question. We talked about it last week in the pre-agenda meeting, but explain the senior graduation thing and why that was an option to do it.
Thank you, Dr. Mills, for bringing that up. So, as noted, we haven't done this before. The reason why that fell on this year's school calendar came straight from the CBAS committee stakeholder feedback, and that the instructional planning days, you saw, well, this is this year's data, but those first came in origin from that feedback group. So to have the instructional planning days and meet the other requirements, we could not get finished before Memorial Day. Again, when TA switched from a number of required days for students and a number of minutes, that changed things, and so those number of minutes are determined by the school day. In your secondary, we have additional leeway that we do not have in our elementaries. We're very crunched to meet our minutes and still have a backup plan where we don't have to tell families they have to return after the school year is over due to bad weather. So going back to seniors, and that also is why with school day testing in high school, we can let some of the high school students out early and we have minutes and we're okay. A point of pride in the district is a very large speech and debate program, and we host one of the largest speech and debate tournaments. We're able to do early release for those students because you can't host and do all those things, and have regular classes because of our minute bank for secondary. But the feedback from that stakeholder group was for families coming in for graduation, having graduation on a holiday weekend allowed family to travel in. Which also, Dr. Mills, it's not directly related to the graduation because we don't have that data yet, but I failed to also point out that's why the Monday after Easter was added to your calendar A and your calendar C because of the feedback from stakeholders. That's a pretty common request. TA's assessment calendar in past years has prevented us to be able to do that. But the way this year's calendar and the timeline falls with TA and assessments, or for the 24-25 school year, we would be able to do that. Typically, the Monday after Easter is also one of our lower attendance rates because some families have traveled and they're not back at school that Monday. So, even from our stakeholder group and the comments received for graduation, even though we don't have any data, some said, I'm excited to graduate seniors early. We love seniors. Our mission is tied around producing future-ready graduates, but when you still have younger students on campus, having the ability for some students to finish and then run final exams with less students on campus was a point that educators commented on. Seniors that have not met all of their credit requirements would not be done for the summer. So senior teachers are still working. We want all of our students to receive the required credits so they can have a high school diploma. And yes, while we have great credit recovery options, you can never replace a teacher with a computer. So having more senior teachers available to help students who still have credits to obtain during those final 4 days was where that came from. But no one in the district, we have not done this, we can't speak to that. You can adopt a calendar and we can change a graduation date, but that is your primary difference between A and C. Not that any of you had any senior pranks, but there are some senior things that come with end of year as well. So don't want to speak for high school administrators or teachers, but I will just reiterate, less students on campus. And the driver of graduating on holiday weekend as families came in was where that came from. We didn't just make that up.
I'll comment on a couple of things, Farrah. The 2-day rollout to begin school. I had to smile because you talked about 7th grade tired and kindergarten tired. And I will say you can add teacher tired, because that is, for me, it was a game changer to have 2 days, regroup over the weekend, and then you really like hit the ground running on Monday. And yeah, 7th graders tend to lay on the floor and go to sleep even. They're so tired, but all kids are tired. So I love that. The instructional planning days for teachers is, to me, a game changer, because when you have time a whole day just to sit in your room and plan with other teachers with no interruption, what you do plan, the activities, the instruction is phenomenal. And that's what we're all about, the instruction in the classroom being at the highest level. So giving the teachers time to do that, and the feedback that I have had this year from teachers, some teachers have told me that's why they would continue in the field. So I appreciate that. And thank you for talking about, because the question I have asked is, what are senior teachers going to do for that week? So thank you for talking about that. The only other concern that I've had about the last week, that is those 4 days. High school, the seniors are either gone or the high school kids are taking finals. Elementary kids is a concern that our middle school kids are not going to come to school. And even the teachers are like, those 4 days are going to be tough. So, of course, I wish we had data to look at how that pans out, but I think that might be a concern. What are we going to do in the middle school with those, and how are we going to tell the public how valuable 4 days of school is? That's a little bit of my concern. I love the Memorial Day weekend. I'd never thought of that, but absolutely. Parents, family coming in, that makes sense. So thank you for all of that information. For me, Dr. Moran, I think I need a little bit more time to process this. I don't know how anybody else feels.
Before we do, we'll make sure everyone gets a chance to ask questions, then we'll go from there.
And I'll say to the board coming in new that you'll find as we get our rhythm, we're going to be bringing you things a month in advance for you to work. And, this is one where, honestly, 2.5 weeks on the job, we could have done a better job of bringing this to you either in December or earlier. So I recognize that, and that's going to be our rhythm. But on this, I'm very content to spend a couple of more weeks doing what we need to do and giving you all more time to process it. I've never graduated prior to the end of the year. I know that that's all our calendar this year. And so I'm anxious to see how that plays out. Another thing to think about is if and when we adopt a calendar, regardless of, let's say that graduation is placed after or at the end of the year rather than 1 week prior to the end of the year, we can always go back and amend at any point in time that graduation date, as long as it's done in far enough advance so people can plan. I'd say 6 to 7 months in advance would be fair. But once we get through this May and we see how it works, we might we might have another conversation with the board to say, hey, you know, what does this look like? So just know that we, as a staff, we've talked about it a lot this week or at the end of last week. We want to make sure that you all are placed in a position of adopting a win-win calendar for the district.
Any other questions for Farah?
Yeah, I just had a clarification point. So the instructional planning days, those are part of the reason why we got pushed a little bit longer in the calendar year. Is that correct?
Yes. If you have instructional planning days and holidays where staff don't have to work, you could make an instructional planning day where staff did not have a holiday, and students did, which would help with that somewhat. The reason why staff were given the holidays was from the staff feedback and from our attendance rate with teachers.
Thank you.
With the state of just mental health and social emotional well-being for employees at this time.
Farah, I wanted to ask, I love the idea of the seniors having additional time if they don't finish before graduation for credit recovery. Do you have an approximate number of, like the average number of students that need that additional time?
We could provide that. It does vary. One of the things, as you know, from required accelerated instruction, high school requirements for end of course, much of your focus for high school students in the summer is around end of course. So you have two things happening for high school students that need to pass their end of course exams, and it's only at high school, and acquire their required credits. It's trying to break a mind shift of, I'll do that for credit recovery in the summer, when oftentimes students in that situation, I don't want to generalize, but many times you have students that are needing both credit recovery and end of course. So that basically is June and July to meet both of those. Even now, we're being very intentional and explaining to students, if you have credits, you're not going to wait until July to recover those credits. We're working on that now. So that is brand new for them to go through that. But again, we don't want them to have 2 additional months where they're having to come up to school when we have built-in capacities to help meet those 2 mandates of both the required credits and end of course.
Thank you. I have one more question too.
Absolutely.
You were talking about how the secondary schools have enough minutes, but the elementary schools don't. Could we add a few minutes to the elementary schools day every day so we don't have that issue?
We've had multiple conversations there. At first, it sounds like, if you just add on this end or this end, it all goes back to the big master plan of transportation, child nutrition, serving meals for our students. So if you ask the question, can you? I would say that all things can be accomplished, but there are other factors that come into lengthening a school day, even at the beginning by a few minutes and at the end by a few minutes. Also, if you know, even when the bell schedules were revised for this school year, that came back from feedback of, if you're a family that drops off an elementary student and you have a middle school student and a high school student, how can you do that and allow enough time if maybe the secondary student doesn't have their own transportation to school? So that's where all those things come into play and why you have a tiered bell schedule at the various levels.
I've certainly been there, done that with the students. Thank you so much.
Dr. Gomez, so you said that end of course and credit recovery is normally done in June and July, those 2 months? And with
They're done
this-
throughout the year as well.
Okay.
But that's your summer. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah, for the summer. So, and you're saying if they do that 24th, and you got seniors, they can get that done in a week?
Saying that you have those days to use where credit recovery, typically credit recovery is done on the computer with a limited number of teachers. They're amazing teachers, so I want to give them all credit. But they're limited numbers because the rest of your teachers are teaching classes. And a teacher cannot be replaced simply by a computer. So you would have additional staff on hand to work with students to obtain required credits.
And they can do that in a week?
Some.
With the
Well, it all depends on how many credits they need.
Okay.
So I'm not, please, Mr. Gallegos, don't take that to mean that just 4 days would be the magic bullet.
Okay.
It just gives a lot more resources to pour into students.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I will say, in those credit recovery, you know, if there's 1 or 2 or 3 teachers in there and the child is working on that computer to finish whatever, if a teacher, because I've been in there sitting beside you, I don't know why, but they work 3 times as fast, or 3 times, they get so much more done because someone is right there with them, encouraging them, saying you can do, because those kids need encouragement and they need that push. They can do it. They, for whatever reason they have it, that now is their time, and lots of times they develop that mentor that cheers them on. They need a cheerleader, and those senior teachers would be there. That's a great idea.
So, Dr. Gomez, I just have a few questions, and I joked last week that I got accused of sleeping through the meeting that we approved the calendar. So I don't know, I got a lot of parents that were upset about the calendar last year. That doesn't mean that that's right or wrong, or that the calendar wasn't the best calendar for the district last year. It just means I need to make sure we answer all those questions so that I can support the district and explain to parents why we did those things. So a couple questions. The 62 people that were at CBAS that responded to the survey, how many of those were parents who do not work in the district? Do we know that number?
Absolutely, I can give you the data breakdown. And I do want to clarify that so each campus has representatives, and if you're a parent representing for a campus, then, and you work in the district, you're listed as a staff member, not a parent.
Yeah, and parents do a great job of advocating for their students, but sometimes they advocate after we've made the decisions, and then we don't get that input until later. So now we have that input from last year. I just want to make sure that we're making sure that that is heard for this following year's calendar. The other question was, I know that 67% of CBAS like the 2-day rollout, but do we have data on what the attendance was for the 2-day rollout versus the 3-day rollout?
We can definitely give that.
Just to make sure that we're not.
The one thing you just have to remember, the first day of school, you're establishing your students, so the first 2 days, but you can always find comparable data.
Yeah, and we may be able to compare an average of those 3 days versus an average of those 2 days. But we just need to look at, make sure that that's not something that is low. And then I also understand that that we have added days of Thanksgiving. We've done a lot of things that parents have wanted and told us, and as a district, we've talked a lot about the fact that as things change, whether it's state legislature or whatever, we're competing to be the best district in academics, in experiences, in CTE, in all of those things. And one of those factors is whether it changes how well kids do other than attendance and being on campus. One of those factors is a calendar. And I know, and so the days that we are giving our teachers is hugely important, and we have to figure out how to keep those days in. And I don't think anyone on this board has any desire to not include days for our teachers and staff to get their work done. But we also have to look at what parents want, and maybe it's just the fact that we haven't gone to school after Memorial Day since COVID, or what it is, but and I don't know that I didn't look at that data, but for whatever we have, haven't we? Yeah. I don't know. For whatever reason, parents this year, I heard a lot of
graduation.
Graduation. It may have been the graduation.
Mine signal the end of school.
The school should
That's the only thing different.
And that may be all it is, but now it's linked to Memorial Day. I mean, whether it was graduation or not, like now it's what I'm hearing is Memorial Day. And so if there is and what we as a board last year said, hey, this is the only way we can get those days in, and it's important to do that. But then we've looked now a year later at some of our neighboring districts, whether it's Lubbock or Fort Worth or Abilene or Midland or Odessa, they figured out a way to give some days and finish May 22nd. And they may not be giving as many days, and I don't know this, but I think it's something we need to look at, because what parents look at is our neighboring districts. And they say, well, Abilene figured out how to be done on May 22nd, and Lubbock figured out how to be done on May 22nd. And so we need to look, and so that as a board, we can explain, yes, they were able to do that, but this is what you are getting at SAISD if we give those additional 4 days, and this is why we're willing to change that day for those days. And so, for me, I think, there's been a lot of good questions, and I think with Opens Meeting Act, we all need to email Dr. Moran or Dr. Moran any concerns we have regarding the district, but we haven't had an opportunity really to discuss this as a group until tonight. And so I think for that reason, even if option A, B, or C is what we decide to go with, I think that just the fact that we haven't had that ability, we should table this until next month. And then even if we end up adopting one of these calendars, we understand exactly what the thought process is, unless someone has a difference of opinion, and then they can make a motion. All right, so we're going to move forward. We will come back and we'll move that to next month's agenda. Thank you, Dr. Gomez.
Do the pre-agenda?
Pre-agenda.
Absolutely.
Thank you for y'all's work on that. I know it's y'all's favorite time of the year as well.
Well, and I agree, as Dr. Moran said, we could have presented it earlier with the leadership change.
Yeah,
It just is where it fell.
It is what it is,
But we are appreciative of all the stakeholders that gave feedback, for sure.
Yes. So, all right, you, Dr. Gomez, get to talk again, I think, now that your voice is really getting stronger as we go. It is, I agree. We're going to do approval of innovative courses for the high school.
Okay, now this truly is a favorite topic. Okay, so this next portion, just on the kind of the recap for the innovative course new offering, is what all of you know. Per TA's guidelines, anytime the district comes forward with an innovative course, that has to be approved by the board. We discussed this in the pre-agenda, but we really want our stakeholders, parents, and especially our students to understand is the great partnership we have in SAISD with Shannon. And just as I shared the stakeholder group with CBAS, we have an advisory board from CTE too, where even individuals from Shannon serve on that board and give us input. So the trend you're hearing from SAISD is input is very important in how we develop offerings and really different opportunities for our families. I must recognize Mrs. Roxanne Fintrist as our Director of Career and Technical Education. As she leads this committee, the committee meets twice a year. In these meetings, input is gathered about different opportunities we can present students, but specifically on being workforce ready once they graduate. Again, no one can read this, but this is what TEA presents, a district on career clusters or pathways. It's very well known in SAISD that we have a very strong CNA pathway. There are multiple options in the pathways, and that's why we want to add the course that was listed for you on the therapeutic healthcare. That's listed as a level 1 course in TEA. And so currently we only have one level 1 course in that pathway, so it gives more offerings. It must be paired with a level 2 course, which when you hear teachers and students, you hear double block. So we already have medical terminology as a level 2 course, which could pair with this. So we're able to get more students that might be interested in this pathway, and specifically receiving those industry-based certifications at the completion. So what we're looking to do with this specifically is offer in the future phlebotomy and EKG for our students. If they go through this, they would have the opportunity to obtain those industry-based certifications. And they'd be hireable at Shannon or at another medical facility upon completion. That's why we wanted to spend some time, and we kind of just show you the very small picture that no one can read, because that's about your guidance you get from TA. But for us, it just goes back to those partnerships. This slide simply shows we currently only have one level 1 course in this healthcare pathway of principles of health science. So this would give 2 options, and we already have the level 2.
I just want to thank you, Dr. Gomez, and Ms. Fentress. Obviously, she's not here tonight, but the CTE programs that SASD offers have increased every year that I've been on the board, I know, and that just comes from the work y'all are doing to make it to where our students can graduate and have jobs straight out of school and certificates to get a better pay rate at those jobs. And so I just want to thank all of y'all for the work y'all are doing on that. And it's not just in healthcare. I know we have significant other CTE programs that we're doing, and I just think it's important for our public to understand that we continue to add to a very robust CTE program and make that a priority for our district. So thank you for presenting that.
And thank you for pointing out, we don't just have these pathways under healthcare. We are simply bringing this one this evening because it's the only new proposed innovative course that would require board approval. In our other pathways, we have some new offerings, but they're not an innovative course.
Any other comments for Dr. Gomez or questions? So do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the additional innovative courses for high school as recommended by the administration.
A second? So I have a motion from Mr. Gallegos and a second from Mrs. Arroyo. Any other board comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All against say the same. Motion passes 6-0. All right. And again, Dr. Gomez, we have TASB Board Policy Update 122.
So this policy update was a very thick policy update. I think it's just very important that for our constituents watching on television to know that the board has had the full packet of all policies since December. In the purpose of discussing any policy change, we don't refer to legal. We look specifically at local. The policy revisions or changes in regards to local policy were very minor. So I do not intend to go through all of these with you. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Each one are listed from CQB, local with technology resources, cybersecurity. That's a very slight revision with some word changes on breach and incident. I will once again give recognition to our staff who work on this. I know that Mrs. Huddleston works directly with Ms. Doyle, our Director of Technology. Ms. Doyle keeps Mrs. Huddleston and myself both updated if we do have a breach. And it all comes down to our number one factor of keeping student information secure. And also we have some employee information that you're constantly working to keep secure in a time of increasing cybersecurity times. So that's very, very minor. CSA local facility standards, safety and security is a new policy. It's all about safety. We are lucky that we have Mr. Henry, his team, Dr. Brandon, and we've already had secured entries. So that's just a new policy, all coming back to the safety updates. DC local employment practices, very minor change. There was some word revisions. So really it brings me to what I wanted to go to for the sake of time, and I've spent a lot of time talking to tonight. FEA local, so I'm going to kind of fast forward to that one, on compulsory attendance, because that's a direct tie-in to our attendance incentive update. As our mission is to create future-ready graduates, whatever that might be. If that is going on for a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree, graduating with an industry-based certification, you'll see the addition of up to 2 days during a student's junior year and up to 2 days during the student's senior year, where students can have visits based on career investigation. So that is the greatest change.
And I'm going to interrupt you, Dr. Gomez. That mirrors what students have already been able to do for college visits.
Absolutely.
And it just shows, again, the district's desire to emphasize our CTE programs as well.
Yes.
And so I just want to thank you all again for coming up with innovative ways to allow those students to have the similar experiences and the exposure. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Another one that had a lot of policy changes, but the board, y'all were ahead because we adopted the policy on opioids and antagonists last year. So if you notice in your policy recommendations prior, there was an X because the X on the local designated that that was our own language because we wanted to be ahead of that. We had already put in place opportunities for in a crisis our secondary campuses having Narcan in such a situation. So while that was new for a lot of places, that was not new for our district specifically. So I didn't plan to go through each one, but I'm happy to answer questions.
And if there were a few questions, I'm sure everyone saw them in Friday Facts that were answered from our pre-agenda meeting that were in our Friday Facts for Friday. So anyone have any other questions about TSB Policy Update 122? Thank you, Dr. Gomez. Do I have a motion to approve Board Policy Update 122?
I make a motion to approve.
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
So I have a motion from Mrs. Duncan and a second from Dr. Mills to add, revise, or delete the local policies as recommended by TASB Policy Update Service and according to the instruction sheet for TASB Localized Policy Manual Update 122. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All against say the same. Motion passes 6-0. Our announcements are that we have our Finance and Pre-Agenda Workshop on February 12th, 2024, and we have a regular board meeting on February 20th, 2024. We are going into executive session, correct? Under
Personnel.
551.074, and we will be back as quick as we can. All right, we have returned from executive session. We took no votes. Took no votes. There was no action taken. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.
We took no votes.